All right, welcome back to the Poor Sports Podcast.
It's almost like you forgot the name for a moment.
I sometimes do. I'm like, which one is this?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm only part of one, but, I hear about many others.
I do on occasion almost call it the Nobody Likes Casey McClain podcast.
That's what I think in my head because I hear that name so often. What did we talk about? Today is, if you're a big sports fan, today is the day for you because we're going to mostly talk about the Bud Light controversy and, if you feel strongly about that.
There is a couple times in it there's a sports angle, though.
There is a few times, and eventually we do get to some sports topics. We talk about the story of the week involving Russell Wilson, which if you don't know that, and you're getting your news from us, well then stay till the end because that'll be a treat.
Yeah.
Of course, we're going to play our home run game at the end, and then one or two other sports topics in there. I think we talk about not real exciting ones. DeMar DeRozan's kid screaming. But we do have some funny kid stories to go along with it.
That's true.
And that's the important thing. It's about the stories we tell along the way.
Hey, it's called Poor Sports because that's all we're promising you is poorly covered sports.
It's exactly what it is.
All right. The Casey McClain is my social media.
I am
I got it. Whose voice is fucked up now, Alex?
At Alex SSN.
All right. This is finally the start. We had some technical issues. I didn't even have to bring them up. I didn't even have to bring up the technical issues.
People don't need to know that there were issues behind the scenes.
If we had a production team, they'd have been fucking thrown out the window.
They would. They probably would not have been happy. Yeah. It would have been a rough day for them.
I'd have been yelling at them. Unfortunately, I'm yelling at myself.
That's why we don't have a production team. No one wants to work for you.
I'm just a monster. I've had a couple comedians recently tell me that they thought I was an asshole.
Yeah.
For a long time. And
they still do.
Well, I think that I'm one of my friends told me this thing. She's actually one of my wife's friends. So when she met me, she said that I was kind but not warm, which I think is about the perfect description of my personality.
Okay, why did she give an explanation why?
I mean I certainly think like among comedians, my favorite comedians for a lot of reasons are like ball-busting East Coast comedians.
Yeah.
And then you and I have a guy who I'll call him at least a mutual acquaintance because I don't know if he'd want to be I don't know if he'd want to be lumped in as no, I'm calling him friend. He attended a comedy show of mine. Kevin Martinez, the VP of marketing for the Mariners.
Oh, I didn't know he attended one of your shows.
Yeah, he came.
Nice.
He came to a show in Seattle. He got in for free. The price was right. But I've interviewed him a couple times for various podcasts. He's one of those like when I have a bad new podcast idea, he's one of the earliest people that I'll often reach out to. And now I feel like I've reached a point where I'm like, it's only bad for him to come on my podcast. So for him,
he probably has no idea that there are any differences to these podcasts. He's just like, he wants to talk to me again.
Yeah,
that's nice.
But so he told me that he thought I have a very. He's like, where are you from? And I was like, here. And he's like, you have like a very East Coast vibe.
Kevin told me that back in the day.
Maybe that's just how he flatters people, dude.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe that's also, by the way, the other option is maybe that's why you don't necessarily think I'm that big of an asshole because you're also an East Coast asshole.
I think the opinion is anyone who's got like a snarky bit of humor to them is maybe East Coasty in his mind. I don't know. I don't know anything to compare it against, so I just assume that's how everybody over there is an asshole.
So I thought one of my favorite things, though, about being a comic was you could say like a thing that's funny because it's so abrasive. And people understood that you were joking with them. Other comedians understood that you were joking with them. And what I've realized is that some of those comedians do not understand that I'm joking with them. Some of them, by the way, I'm being completely honest that I'm not joking. I do mean the mean thing that I'm saying.
Yeah, it's a tough space to navigate as you get older. I think when you're in your 20s, what you just described, that happens all the time. You even if you're not a funny person, you'll make the funny joke, and everyone seems to agree that you're joking, whether it's appropriate or not. But as you get older, the group around you seems to change, and they're not as receptive to those types of things.
Sure. Yeah, I've recently heard from a couple from various comedians that they're like either they thought I didn't like them, or they still actively don't like me that much because of something I did like very early on into us meeting. The other thing that I've realized that I got to live with is like I'm like one of the people now, believe it or not, this is surprising because you knew me before I did comedy.
Yeah.
I'm one of the most tenured comics. Like I'm one of the more, not the most, but one of the more tenured comics in this area. And so I'm not like, I don't know. I never like looked up to someone who'd been doing comedy for 8 years as like, oh my God, that's my role model. But I mean, I'm not saying people look at me as a role model, but they look at me as someone who's like in a more like quote unquote powerful position.
You're like a young life counselor for comedy.
Yes. Exactly. And apparently I've been diddling my students mentally, I guess. I don't know.
Well, here's the thing about Seattle comedy. As somebody who's not really in the scene but observes it and has been around it for a long time, Seattle, Tacoma, just really the greater Puget Sound area, it never really feels like there are people that are comic legends from around here. The ones that become legendary, it feels like they move on and they only loosely affiliate with this area at a certain point in time. You know, like Joel McHale, really good example. Gets his start on Almost Live. He claims Seattle still, but it's not like he's often performing here or really even like showing up here that often enough to for everyone, for the world to recognize that he's from Seattle, right? Like there's nobody, like the world recognizes Macklemore's from Seattle, right? Mm-hmm. Like in music, wouldn't you say? Like not that everyone's happy with that, but it's the reality.
I defend Macklemore, even though I'm not a huge fan of his music. I defend him.
No, I do too, to some degree. But I think the world recognizes he is a Seattle guy. It's the city and the person are synonymous. Another example in music would be like E40, right? Like he just got kicked out of the Sacramento Kings game. But everybody associates him with the Bay Area. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of comics, I feel like, that are legendary status that get associated with Seattle. And maybe that's just a thing in comedy. Maybe that's just a thing where you don't necessarily associate those people with a certain.
I think outside of Bill Burr is like there's Boston guys.
They're East Coast guys.
Boston specifically. There's a great, if you or the listeners are into stand up, there's a great documentary called "When Stand Up Stood Out" about the origins of the Boston comedy scene. That's amazing. But they had like a stretch of, because Seattle's had some stretches like Joel McHale's a guy, but like Fahim Anwar, Hari Kondabolu has Seattle ties, like Kelsey Cook started in the Seattle Tacoma scene, which actually started. There are like people, Mitch Hedberg, Joey Diaz is another guy. Mm-hmm. These guys kind of came through the Seattle. Josh Wolf, they came through the Seattle scene. Joey Diaz, by the way, can't come back to Washington State because there's still an existing arrest warrant because he threw a booker. This is my understanding. By the way, it could be inaccurate, but I believe he's told the story. Threw a comedy booker in his trunk. And was basically kidnapped a comedy booker, and so he can't come back to Washington State. You'll never see him perform in a Washington State venue because of that.
That is taking the joke too far. I guess. That's where the line is drawn.
So there are people, but I think the other the one thing about it is, it's very hard, especially like 20 years ago. It was almost impossible to be a working comic out of anywhere besides LA and New York.
Yeah.
Now, like my buddy Gabriel Rutledge he's able to do it. He's been doing it for 20 years, but like he was kind of, I don't want to speak on his finances, but was like kind of scraping by and is finally in his like late 40s reached this point of traction where it's like he's a lot more comfortable financially. And people know him and he's got like a social media following and all that shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that but I don't know if there's other cities like New York, obviously, like Dave Attell. There's these guys who are like New York guys. Yeah. Los Angeles probably has a few, but most comics don't start in LA.
Yeah, it's probably more of a nomadic way of life than like musicians or actors or things like that. I get that. I mean, that makes sense.
But I also think it like kind of comes in waves because like it'll be like Philadelphia's having that moment right now where there's like a bunch of comics coming out of Philadelphia. Seattle had it. Like it was like probably starts at like those Joey Diaz years and ends like Billy Wayne Davis as a guy who's like probably the end of the like guys who had or people comics who had significant time spent in Seattle who've made like great careers for themselves. Kelsey Cook, I guess maybe. But she did it like she was doing all right in Seattle, but is like blew up in LA.
It's interesting because the Seattle area has so many transplants now, just with people in general, that like if you were going to do regional comedy around here, people would not get it. Like I can't imagine most people would get it to some degree. If you kept it light about the traffic or whatever, like people would understand that. But there's so many people that have no ties to this area. And also, I mean, it's kind of a weird scene because I feel like, I've been going to comedy shows for like 20 plus years, or about 20 years.
What's your first comedy show?
Oh, man. I don't remember. I know it was at the Comedy Underground, but I saw
Seattle or Tacoma?
Seattle, but I saw so many shows there that I don't remember who. But like the Seattle area has lost a lot of comedy clubs. I know like the Tacoma area is thriving as far as
right now,
comedy goes, but everybody knows that there are more people in the general Seattle area, and for people that live in Seattle, oftentimes Tacoma is too far, quote unquote too far. It's not really, but a lot of people perceive it that way. And the fact that, the Seattle metro area has lost some of its comedy clubs over the years seems like, I don't know, in some ways kind of an indictment on the scene around here.
Right before I started comedy, Tacoma had 3 clubs. And 2 of them shut down, the Tacoma Comedy Underground and then a place called Grit City Comedy. And now there's going to be 3 clubs in Tacoma again pretty soon when Tacoma Comedy Club opens their smaller second location. That's pretty cool. But yeah, Seattle, like the Comedy Underground's gone, but there's Club Comedy Seattle. There's a new place opening in Capitol Hill called Comedy Bar. There's actually a comedy club called Hereafter. There's not like that institutional comedy club outside of Laughs in the U District. But that's even had like that was in Kirkland for a while, and that venue used to be Giggles. Like
it was Seattle, a strip club for a while
called Jiggles. Yes, it's a very common it's a common joke at Giggle or at Laughs is that they just had to change the J on the sign.
I've seen a show there in the aftermath of Jiggles, and it definitely still felt like a strip club in there. Like the way that the stage is set up and the audience is like, there should be a pole right there. There should definitely be a pole right there. And
please book me, people of Laughs. But it was kind of fun. Wait, hold on, I'm gonna look at one thing. I know that your dear wife hates this. Thank you for listening, by the way, Alex's dear wife. We need all the listeners we can get. So I was in my first comedy show that I ever attended outside of an open mic was at the Tacoma Comedy Underground.
Yeah. Hosted
by then manager of the Tacoma Comedy Underground, Sonic Sky, Chris Brannon, rest in peace, died a year or 2 ago.
Yeah.
Got me in for free. We were like buddies from blogging stuff. And it was Chris Brannon, this guy named Huck Flynn, who has also passed away. He was significantly older than Sonic Sky. And then a guy who was like a police officer, like maybe had some health issues. So it's possible that the entire lineup that I saw is dead.
You're the only living member.
And it was like basement of, it was called the Big Whiskey Saloon at the time, but it's like you could smell the beer spill that had there was sticky floors and flies, and it was perfect for comedy. That's like that, believe it or not, as an audience member, you're like, oh, this is like not glamorous. And then you go to a place like Tacoma Comedy Club where it's like higher ceilings. They put a lot of effort into the production.
Yeah.
They put a lot of it. Everything is on purpose that's happening there. And especially even more so at their newer clubs. That's the first club they ever opened. Now they own like 6 or 7 clubs across the country, but they've started all those ones with the budget to be like, this is how we want the club to be. And, but everything is on purpose there, where the other place you're like, they shoved us into this fucking basement and we don't even know if this is legal. Like you might not even have a license to serve alcohol in here.
Well, that's like, I mean, the Seattle Comedy Underground was kind of the same way, where It definitely feels like if there's a fire in here, we're all going to die. But that's the vibe that you feel like you should have in a comedy club.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like got a speakeasy vibe to it. It can be rowdy in there. It definitely feels divey. And yet, even when they feel divey, it's like it's slightly more upscale than a dive bar.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, because like they have nicer chairs and they have the tiny little tables and like the way that the lighting works. It's just a little bit better than a dive bar, but it still feels very divey. That's like the ideal comedy club setting.
Yeah. I love a low ceiling, just concrete walls, like let that sound bounce off of everything. It's like really great. And the closer, if you go to like the Comedy Cellar in New York, I was talking to somebody about the Comedy Cellar in Las Vegas. I've never been to the one in Las. No, maybe it was you.
Probably me because I've been there a few
times.
Was it you? Yeah. I mean, I've definitely talked with you about it.
Somebody was like, "Oh, it's a dump." Did you say that?
Well, the casino is a dump because it's at the Rio.
No, they were talking about the room itself.
I don't think the room itself is a dump.
Well, somebody told me. I'm trying to remember who told me it was a dump. Somebody that's like been in Vegas.
Yeah.
It wasn't. I don't think it was you. It was somebody else I was talking to. Anyway, for a comedian or a comedy fan, I view that as like it's like going to Wrigley Field. Have you been to Wrigley Field?
I have not. But
it is. If you don't appreciate the history. If you're not a fan of the Cubs, if you don't appreciate the fact, or just appreciate the fact that this is like one of the oldest stadiums still in existence, it's a dump. It's a fucking AAA stadium. It would be like the Rainiers, where the Rainiers play, Cheney Stadium, is a nicer facility than Wrigley Field. I would still love to be able to attend games at Wrigley Field all the time because I get the history is not lost on me. I fully respect and love the history. Same with the Comedy Cellar. Same with the Comedy Underground in Seattle. Less so with the one in Tacoma. Yeah. But at some point, maybe that's how I'll feel about Tacoma Comedy Club. Is like maybe I don't know. I guess we'll be doing like virtual comedy, like virtual reality comedy. And we'll be like, man, remember we used to go into that cool ass like warehouse that had a stage in it, you know?
You have to be able to smell the comedy club to like get the full vibe.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
So, but by the way, this is all I did comedy a couple days ago, which was first time. I had been underestimating my last show. I did comedy on Sunday. My previous show was March 11th, and I've been fighting that laryngitis issue. That I actually now I've started to think back and trace it back to that show I did on March 11th. I felt like kind of not great going there, like a little bit of a cold, but nothing crazy. But at that show, the mic kept cutting out. So I was at a fucking like Elks Lodge.
You were yelling.
Screaming, trying to get my punchlines through. And by the way, to limited results, like not even worth the effort. And I almost...
Was this an Elks Club crowd too?
Oh yeah. It was like it was a membership drive. Okay, so it was like members and people they want to become members.
I can't imagine there are too many Elks Club people out there listening to this.
Sure,
right
maybe
now.
not.
But if you are... Apologies to you.
And if you're at the Anacortes Elks Club, thank you for listening, and fuck you for not having good mics.
I can't imagine those people are like the most in tune to modern day humor.
I would definitely say they had like, I always say though, like conservative crowds and black crowds are the most honest, and they have the least agenda when they walk in the door. And I definitely think when you walked in there, there's like certain things that they didn't like, but yes, they're not like they certainly aren't like they're not looking for someone with a cardigan and big glasses, you know what I mean? They want like someone who's telling jokes. Give us some fucking jokes.
The quick hitters. Yeah.
And by the way, those like quick timing jokes, they lose a lot of power when you're screaming them from the stage with no amplification.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like an ideal situation for sure.
Anyway, also update on unemployment. I went to the dump today. I took some shit to the dump today. I
had a guy offer me a job the other day at the grocery store, and it made me think of you. I was like, if only our roles were swapped right now, this might...
I might not accept that job.
You wouldn't want the job. It was definitely a pyramid scheme. Does this happen to you? Does this happen to you in public? Because this happens to me every couple years.
Not in public. I do get like... I had a cousin and I have a comedy friend that just did this, and I'm sorry if you're listening, comedy friend, where it's like I've had actually a couple comedy friends where they get kind of like roped into some sort of multi-level marketing thing.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh no, it's a great opportunity. And I'm like, listen, with my cousin especially, I was like, do you think so little of me and our relationship that you're like going to risk conning me out of thousands of dollars so that, I mean, I grant like this is probably, you're in too deep. You've found yourself in too deep.
The thing about your job is that you probably, like, if you have a good job, you generally don't want to talk about it with friends and family because it's boring. It's boring. Yes. It just is. Like, I mean, you can have passion for your job still, but you're still not going to like hang out with your friends and tell them all about it. So if you have a job where you are actively trying to recruit friends in order for you to make more money, you are involved in a pyramid scheme. I hate to break break the bad news to you.
Yeah, multi-level marketing is just like the new pyramid. It just means pyramid scheme. Right?
It's the politically correct way.
Is it because are we trying to make the pharaohs feel less sad about being pharaohs?
Yes, we cannot insult the people of the pyramids any longer.
I mean, I understand.
They will not be slandered by these schemes.
If we were like, it's a you piece of shit Egyptians, if that's what we said, but like nobody said, I don't know. Okay. I mean, the pyramids were built by like slaves.
The multi-level marketing term has gotten so big now that everybody just understands it's a pyramid scheme. But I think for the first couple of years when it came out and they started calling it that, they probably felt like geniuses.
Oh, that was a euphemism so you wouldn't know it meant pyramid scheme.
Yeah.
Got
initially,
it. Okay,
initially
okay.
it was. But
so we weren't saving anyone's feelings. We were just trying to con more people into
look, I mean, the reality is, like, I was lucky enough to I almost got roped into the Cutco knives, which is like the classic one. But I was like 18 or 19 years old when that happened. So I was exposed to it early. I didn't ultimately do it. I learned from it.
Yeah.
And now you can easily identify that type of thing. But there are people that never encounter that sort of thing until they're like 30 years old and they think that they've discovered something new, you know, and it's like, you hate to break it to your family and friends, but it's just not that easy, unfortunately. Anyway, this guy was asking, these guys, when they approach you in public, they just will strike up a conversation about anything. Like this guy just wanted to talk about the snacks I was looking at.
Nice.
And then he wouldn't shut up. And then I was like, all right, dude, I got to go. And he's like, oh, what do you do for work? And I was like, I have a job. And he was like, oh, okay. Like, it was like I had kicked him in the nuts, you know? But this has happened.
Were you buying snacks that made it look like you were long-term unemployed?
What
snacks were you buying that made this man think you were a reasonable target?
This happens to me every couple of years, so I must look like I am unemployed when I go to the grocery store. That must be what it is.
What were you buying that day, though?
I was buying Chex Mix. So
that's for fucking losers, dude. Chex Mix is for losers.
Well, he probably because he kind of came out of nowhere. Like he just popped around the corner and was there talking. You know, it all happened so fast. This guy probably hangs around the snacks that you would associate with people who are high. Right?
Sure.
Like, if I hang out by the snack aisle, like, at least 1 in 10 of these people are going to be high. Yeah. And those are the people he probably gets.
Gotcha. That makes sense. My wife, by the way, I'm also doing, you said snacks, I'm doing keto. 10 pounds, which, believe it or not, folks, this is me 10 pounds down in such a short time. But my wife said this thing that made me laugh because she didn't mean it to be like, if you were giving her the least generous interpretation, it means like you lost 10 pounds, but it doesn't fucking show.
Yeah.
But it was like, it's like so much weight, like a percentage of weight for you to notice, and then for other people to notice, and then people you don't see very often to notice. And it was like, it's like 10% for you to notice, 10% more for other people. It's probably not quite that. That's a lot of weight, but especially for me. But have you ever done? I know you've done some, like, we've been involved in some. It sounds funny. It sounds funny to say that because it's like we owned. It's like we co-owned a personal training business. We've done some like weight loss contests in the past.
Dude, we got to tell the weight loss contest story. I don't know if it's for today, but the one that is just the wildest one that was part of our weight loss contest.
Yeah, well, it's funny because that's the origins of my recollection is I am like partially responsible for that person being. I'm like I'm down the multi-level marketing scheme of that.
She was running this girl was running a scam on us. But yeah, we used to do that like every year for like 3 months out of the start of the year. We would do. We called it like a Biggest Loser competition, and it would be, you know, you kind of weigh in sneakily, right? Like, so, because you don't want other people to know your weight.
Yeah.
But you would lose a percentage of weight.
So you've seen my weight about 35 times. Babe.
I've seen a lot of people's weight because I would organize it and run it. And honestly, I don't remember the numbers from anybody for the most part. But I'll never forget the girl that nobody seemed to know, who was a friend of your friends.
Yes.
And even they were just loosely affiliated with her, which we had money on the line for these things. You know, whoever lost the highest percentage of weight in 3 months, which, you know, looking back on now, you can feel however you want to feel about that. I think a lot of nutritionists out there would be like, that was a terrible idea. And maybe it was. But
I will say, for the people who I'm friends with, who I knew, who apparently knew, who I don't even know who this person is. Put them in a lineup. I don't know who they are.
Yeah, none of us do, really.
Sure. So for them, I will say, I think it was like a lifestyle changing thing to do. Genuinely.
Yeah, those friends.
And I believe he won the year before that or something.
Yeah, they actually ended up, they were like big proponents of this competition, and then they would win it. But they legitimately won it. Like you could see, people knew them. You could see their progress. I could say, like, photos. Frankly, they've both gotten very into fitness. Yeah. I think they had the best possible outcome you could have hoped for. Anyone, and then they bring this friend in who lives in another country, so red flag already.
Hate foreigners, yep, agreed, Alex. I'm on board. Okay, next part.
Lives in another country. Your friends, when we talked to them after the fact, were like, we don't even really know her that well. Why did she get in this cup? Anyway, she basically tricked us and tried to win a bunch of money from all of us. And ultimately, I just put my foot down and said, there's no human way you lost this much weight. And also, the circumstances of your submissions are very suspect. Sure. I think the last thing that we asked for was like we need to see like you on a scale with a newspaper or something that indicates today's date, proving that this happened, and then we just never heard another response.
Oh, really?
That was it.
And then my recollection is that instead of giving the money to by the way, I was disconnected from all the controversy because I was nowhere close to winning. There were people who were like in second place.
Yeah.
And by the way, my memory also is that this lady, oh my God, I'm going to do this shit again to your poor wife. I'm so sorry. I'm doing a technical thing.
You're just plugging in your phone. That's
I'm plugging in the phone that's producing the whole show.
The phone that keeps the show running, which is important.
That is important. Anyway, I also somebody was like had a big lead, like, and then got passed at the end, right?
Basically, what happened is down the stretch of this competition. So this woman who was, normal weight, not we're not talking somebody who's like 300 or 400 pounds, but somewhere in the normal range, basically claimed to have lost about like 75 pounds in 12 weeks, some absurd number, like a proportion that you cannot fathom, like an impossible percentage of weight was lost here.
Right.
With most of it coming at the very end of this competition, where you're like, so cut down the 3-month window to basically like a month, and this person claimed to have lost that much weight solely to take home everybody else's money.
Right.
And it was really one of those things where it just felt like she was probably needed the money, I assume. It's like a couple $100. It's not even that much, but clearly something she needed. And then was preying on a bunch of people she didn't really know.
Sure. Victimless in her mind.
Absolutely. She doesn't know any of these people. She certainly doesn't know me. Apparently she only barely knows her friends.
Yeah.
So this was no skin off her back, but we ultimately did not give in and let her. Now, if she really did lose like 50% of her body weight in those 3 months, then we're real assholes for not believing or validating her. But I doubt that occurred.
I think, yeah. What I was trying to get, that's funny because I remember that being a big thing and just feeling so disconnected from it. Like I was not angry. I was never part of the controversy. I never was like giving my suggestions on how to deal with it. And I love those moments where I can just see people losing their minds over something relatively petty.
There's a lot of very upset people.
And I don't have to be involved in it in any way. Yeah. That's always fun.
The nice thing about all those upset people is that they were all coming to me, which was fun.
Well, you signed up to be our weight loss coach.
I did. Yeah, coach, look at me.
I'm doing keto right now, and I didn't know about this thing until I started doing it, but it's called the keto flu. Have you ever heard of this?
I've heard the term. Do you just kind of get sick afterwards, or like what?
It's by the way, like I haven't been sick enough recently.
Yeah.
So I'm doing keto and intermittent fasting, and
that's a lot.
so when you eat like exclusively fat or like fatty stuff, not a lot of sugar, and then I think like you're also like a lot of times your macronutrients or whatever bullshit, potassium and magnesium, I think, nausea, like irritability, all this stuff. Maybe this is why comics hate me, is because I'm so irritable, because I'm just getting so goddamn hot and thin.
This is how it starts. In a month from now, you'll be like, so I signed up for CrossFit.
I've been coming up on like the time, the eating period, that I feel like I'm going to fucking throw up my entire stomach's contents, which are very little. But you get like I didn't know it was going to be that way. I think you get used to it over time, and your body stops making you want to throw up all the time. But it feels like yesterday I golfed, and I played, my like eating window started like at the end of so I just had like some cashews in my bag. I ate those. Dude, by the time we got done, I was like, I'm going to puke. I need more water. I need more everything. I'm completely depleted.
It's like you're observing a religious holiday
I know.
every day of your life.
Exactly. It's me. It's Yom Kippur every day, or whatever, Ramadan in my life. Are these fasting holidays?
I think Ramadan is.
Okay.
That sounds right.
All right.
The worst part about getting older is that, when you're younger, even as a younger adult, you don't have to change your diet. You can still eat and drink whatever you want. All you got to do is just like go to the gym every now and then, and your body will stay trim.
Yeah.
And then you get into your 30s, and you can go to the gym and spend 24 hours a day there, and you still be a fat ass if you are eating bad. And that's the worst part about it, because I like to eat good food, as I'm sure you have in your past as well.
Yeah, I still do. I just I've been abstaining. I mean, honestly, like a lot of the food I've been eating, I still really like, but it's pretty rough to it's
tough. I
it
assume
is hard.
do you drink beer?
No.
So you're not even drinking beer.
No, you know
but
what?
Beer is also like the worst.
I'm not touching a Bud Light, God damn it.
I assume not Bud Light.
I've never been a Bud Light fan, but I do want to talk about that. I want to actually start.
I feel like this is the most pub Bud Light has ever got. It's got to be like actually good for them, right? Like
from like a marketing perspective, I think it's been fucking incredible.
I don't like Bud Light. I think the flavor sucks, but I would actually go out of my way to drink it now.
Yeah, so that is one thing that's funny. So I'm gonna give like a brief. I want to give like a genuine opinion on this. I do want to make fun of some shit involved in this, but
absolutely.
But so, I think very often on this show, too often we talk about politics. Let me rephrase that. Too often I talk about politics. Okay.
We typically go off the rails in all conversations. They
Sure.
just kind of branch out all over the place, and eventually you do that enough, you're just going to land on politics.
Sure. And I find living in Seattle, being like a left of center person who I believe is like rational, and I've been striving for years to be like stridently principled, so that when something happens and it's somebody that I like, that like I can still say this is shitty, that this person who I like, who I agree with on most things, did this thing, right? So what I find myself doing in Seattle is defending conservatives, even though I'm not one of them, even though I disagree with them on most things.
Your principle is that people have the right to feel the way that they do. I think that's
Sure.
maybe one of your principles, which in a lot of ways I do agree with. I think that there is, everybody has their right to their opinion. I think where they run into issues is how they communicate it.
Yeah. Well, I am truly like a free speech absolutist, but also
Sure.
I think that in this region, in Seattle, it's like summer camp. It's like fucking theater camp, where it's like we're not even dealing with conservatives as real people a lot of the time. And that's my problem, is like dehumanization. It's like people in like the suburbs of Tuscaloosa or something like that are like talking about inner city black people, but they never encounter them. They're just like a concept. They think of New York as this fucking purge city. You know what I mean? They think of people talk about Seattle a lot now. They're like, oh, Seattle is this and that. It's got these problems. And I'm like, I've been in Seattle a lot recently, and I spent a lot of time in Seattle pre-pandemic. And maybe there's like an uptick a little bit. Seattle's had those problems for a long fucking time.
Yeah, I think the difference about the Seattle area in general, and this is probably true for a lot of big cities, is that we have every type of person here that you could possibly have, right? Like it's everything. I mean, I think I've mentioned this on this show before, but like I once heard KJ Wright, the Seahawks linebacker, talking about his first experience in Seattle, and he was coming from Mississippi, where he'd previously only seen white people and black people, and he comes to Seattle, and now everybody is ethnically ambiguous, right? Like there are white people, there are black people, but everything in between, and that's kind of what we have here. And so I think a lot of people here, you can speak more knowledgeably about kind of the world around you because it's more diverse than in a lot of places.
Sure. I think it's diverse in one way, but I don't think you can speak very knowledgeably about conservatives because here conservatives aren't real. They're a boogeyman, right? Like it's like.
Well, we have a lot of conservatives. I think if you go 20 minutes outside of Seattle.
In King County, which isn't even Seattle proper, not all of it's, but in King County, it's like a 90-10. And I bet you if you go, the closer you get to the center of Seattle, the more. We have one of the only elected Democratic socialists in the country.
Yeah.
We are very far left in this
she
region.
got elected by riding on the backs of Sonics fans, which if you're like me, who's a Sonics fan, you'll never forget that.
Yeah, I've got some.
That's a much longer story for another day.
I've got some, but so my point is like this is a thing. I spend a lot of time because I know real conservatives. I've lived with real conservatives. My dad's a conservative. My dad's side of the family is conservative. I know that conservative people aren't inherently evil or anything like that, and it bothers me when people of any type get reduced to a stereotype or a caricature of themselves. And it's not just I don't like when black people get generalized as criminals. I think that's terrible. I don't like when conservatives get reduced to just like evil, uncaring psychopaths. I don't like that. I spend a lot of time, but this, so Bud Light.
All of that to say.
Well, we're gonna get to a point.
We took the long way.
Bud Light has there's hypocrisy and then there's hate that I think is quite obvious here. So Bud Light sponsored or received like social media advertising from a famous trans woman named Dylan Mulvaney, and the conservative side of the internet lost their fucking minds. And like you said, they signal boosted the shit out of Bud Light by boycotting them, by doing all the shit. And there's a part of me that wonders, because I know this happens with other products, if this isn't a somewhat devious advertising strategy to go like, we're going to find this like controversial person and we're going to dangle that meat in front of the lions and allow them to boost our product. And with no intention of Dylan Mulvaney making trans people drink more Bud Light or anything like that.
I don't care if you're trans, if you're not trans. You can do better than Bud Light.
Yes, that's fair. That's absolutely fair. But I absolutely want to make fun of Dylan Mulvaney in a little bit, but what I would like to do first is watch what I actually believe is because we didn't talk about this last week. I'd like to make fun of the whole thing, but I was watching, so Kid Rock put out a video on Twitter. A lot of people have seen it by now. And I think when you watch this, it's hard to imagine if you are a trans person not viewing this as some, at minimum, not very subtle threat of violence to you, because essentially, so we'll watch it and then, so it's Kid Rock's MAGA hat here.
Grandpa's feeling a little frisky today.
That's a good start.
Say something to all you and be as clear and concise as possible. Fuck Bud Light and fuck Anheuser-Busch. Have a terrific day.
Okay, so Kid Rock.
Kid Rock, who has aged exactly as you would expect Kid Rock to have aged.
Yes, Kid Rock looks like if my Uncle Rick never or like got money, and
his why do they all get orange skin? You know, like Trump was that way too. His skin got very orange.
I think that's different reasons for Kid. I think Kid Rock is genuinely out in the sun a lot. He lives out in the, has some property. I think he spends some time outside. I think he is. But by the way, I also think my understanding is he's like a from rich parents guy. Like, isn't this?
It looks like his parents were like one normal person and then a Rawlings baseball glove.
I believe that my understanding is that they're like kind of rich suburban folks.
Yeah, he's like the Ice Cube of like, you know, Ice Cube always got a lot of shit because
he starting shit with Ice Cube.
So when you think back to NWA, you know, most of the people in that group like actually came up in tougher circumstances, but Ice Cube was like from a more privileged family, or at least that was the rumor around him. Kid Rock is like that, but for know, the other side.
And so I'm almost willing, by the way, and you know this, and this is maybe even a fault of mine in some people's eyes, I'm willing to entertain almost any thought experiment. Like if we want to talk about these like deep issues, I love when I meet someone who is willing to just go down the path. Like, let's go down to the most extreme path and work backwards from there. I like that.
Well, and I think just with this podcast, as we've been doing it, we've touched on a lot of those issues.
Sure.
And we're probably not the people anyone would expect to touch on those issues, for one thing, you know? And I mean, you can feel how you want to feel if we're even equipped to talk about those issues. But I think what the problem is just as a society as a whole, we don't talk about those issues face to face with people. We do these things on social media where we'll post extreme opinions about them, and then that doesn't necessarily help anybody, right? It allows us to fly our flag of whatever we stand for, but not in a way that's necessarily productive, right? It's not productive conversation that's occurring because of that. We're trying to incite anger on the opposition, or we're really trying to rally people who think the same way we do to give us likes or retweets or whatever, the attention we're seeking. And the fact that we don't talk about these things in a productive way is like harmful. It's legitimately harmful.
I agree completely. And also, I think Kid Rock has asked us, he said this is the most clear and concise thing. He's asked us to ignore any nuance. Said, this is my opinion. It's basically like interpret it how you will. And if I'm a trans person and I see a guy who's got a table full of what he's essentially representing trans people to a degree with this table of Bud Light, right? He's saying because Dylan Mulvaney is a spokesperson for Bud Light, this is how I feel, and I'm shooting all of my Bud Light. With all the violence, gun violence we experience in this country, to me, if it's clear and concise, the only clear and concise message is basically Kid Rock believes that this type of behavior, to engage in free market capitalism and free speech, by the way, these things that conservatives, I would argue most of the time, are better on. But in this case, they're saying those things, if Anheuser-Busch continues to exercise those conservative-backed ideals, he's threatening violence. What can you take out of this besides him threatening violence?
Yeah, I mean, that's what he's doing. I mean,
this isn't a peaceful boycott. This is him. I mean, it's like, I can't listen.
Yeah.
So often I hear people say shit where I'm like, they're like, this thing is violence. Everything is violence. And I'm like, this is fucking crazy that you think that silence is violence. I disagree with that. But shooting a gun at a fucking product as a protest for them having a trans spokesperson is very obviously at least alluding to violence.
Yeah, I mean, I think, with all of this stuff, I mean, anytime, it seems like a lot of brands, as you were kind of alluding to earlier, brands have found a way to incite either side of the political divide,
Sure.
right? Like there is, because in a minute we'll talk about the kind of the aftermath of this, but brands all over the place are really like latching onto people's strong political or moral beliefs and trying to capitalize on the way people feel, because those are in many cases the things people are most passionate about. It used to be that you just, you sex sells, or you throw it in the vein of like a sports team. We're going to associate with a sports team because we know people are passionate about sports.
Sure.
But now companies have realized over the last decade or so that people are very, very passionate about their politics, to the point that no one seems to care if someone gets killed, if a life is taken throughout this entire process. I mean,
and by the way, again, on that specific topic, like because people, I also hate the term whataboutism, because I do think it's valid to go like, if this was a thing that I disagreed with or agreed with, would I react differently? And like the equivalent to this, in my opinion, or an equivalent, a decent analogy is the Kathy Griffin holding the severed Trump, like, obviously fake, but severed Trump head covered in blood and all that. And I think that was also could easily be interpreted as a call for violence. Yeah,
it was the same stuff that the people she's opposing do. You basically sunk to their level.
She did this first, but my point is like everyone was mad about that. Conservatives were very angry about that, and rightfully, in my opinion, rightfully. I think that's shit imagery. I think that's very bad. I think if they would have done that for Obama, or if they had done it for Hillary, and certainly there are people creating horrific imagery of both those people, as they are for Trump, and as they will for whoever our next president is, as they're doing for Biden, etc. But for a prominent figure in both cases to reach that level where we are going to such an extreme, and then to go like, well, I didn't think it was that big of a deal. I mean, that's not what Kid Rock's doing. I think Kathy Griffin stood by it too.
Yeah, I mean, all of this stuff is just the aftermath of the social media era, and we're experiencing. This is the first. We are only one generation into social media. It's only been 20 to 25 years of real social media, mainstream social media. I mean, everybody. If you're our age, there were chat rooms and forums in the 90s, but that wasn't mainstream.
If you caught everything that I said on like a Counter-Strike voice chat in fucking 2001, I would never have a job again.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so we're only 20 years in the mainstream social media, and what we're finding out is that it's the most powerful way to reach people.
Sure.
The most powerful way. Even if people don't seem to be affected by it, you are affected by it in the way that you purchase things, in the way that you talk to others, in the way you think about others. I mean, 20 years ago, before social media, everyone kept their political beliefs pretty private. It wasn't a thing that people typically talked about. It was, you might talk about it with like your close friends or family, but now everybody seems to have some idea about everybody else's politics, or at least can like look at somebody and like make a call. Right?
Yeah.
Like you couldn't even do that 20 years ago. You couldn't like just go walking down, like who knew? You knew how people voted for sure, because you could see the percentages and the aggregate numbers.
Well, you knew how like a group of people voted, but not an individual.
But you would not be able to just make that much of a call on an individual, because it wasn't something that was part of our consciousness. And what social media has done is it just allows us, and I mean, you and I have benefited from social media in a lot of ways, because we use it as a platform to be funny or meet people or whatever it is that we're trying to do or promote. And there's so many people that don't use it that way. There are so many people that, they are we've said it before, but they become like the star of their own movie, and everything revolves around them. I mean, I'll notice it. I'll make a joke about the Mariners, and there will always be at least one person that takes it personally. And it's like, I certainly wasn't talking to you. I had no idea you even existed. But there are so many people that think everything on the internet is like specifically targeted at them. Right. They take it so personally that it becomes toxic, and they react in the way that you would if you were like insulting somebody to their face.
Right.
They react in just such a terrible manner. And this type of shit is like what causes people to lose their mind and go crazy and actually start doing real stuff.
And I mean, I guess that's exactly kind of my point. Is like, I think this is scary.
Yeah.
Like genuinely scary. So I mean, this is Kid Rock is fucking old and out of touch. Don't get me wrong. And by the way, like there's a bunch of comics that work with Kid Rock. I'm like friends with people who are friends with Kid Rock, amazingly.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that like in a conversation or whatever that I don't even want to like judge a person on like I don't think Kathy Griffin should be fucking in prison or something like that. I don't think Kid Rock should be in prison. I think we've reached a bad point. This is to me indicative of this situation where it's no longer because another conservative thing that I've heard, or especially like a libertarian thing, which seems to be like kind of just slowly oozing into the alt-right-ish kind of thing. I don't think I don't think Kid Rock here represents all of conservatives again, but
he represents a certain constituency that follows him though.
For sure. And that follows these issues very closely.
Yeah.
But this is scary, and conservatives or especially libertarians have always said like whatever an adult wants to do, it should be their choice if there's no victims, right? If it doesn't affect other people, the government shouldn't be involved. And frankly, like that's kind of how I feel. Is like if you feel that way about the world, you should feel that way about Dylan Mulvaney also. And that's like by the way, to get into like Dylan Mulvaney, I didn't even know who the fuck she was.
I have no idea. I mean, I know who she is now.
Sure.
Yeah. I
so she, as then going by he, him pronouns was, which I mean, people get mad at that too. I don't give a shit. Here's what this is my stance. I don't give a shit if people put their pronouns in their bios. Do it. I don't care. I don't want people forcing me to do it. But also, why would I care? Why do I care what you put in your fucking bio? Why should anyone care? But at the time, he was in Book of Mormon, which is a fucking hilarious.
Oh, yes. I have seen the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
It is very funny.
And so, like, famous from that, apparently, but then became this, like, social media darling as a gay man, and then, I think, non-binary, and then a trans woman. And I like, she's goofy. Like, she does some fucking weird shit. Like, there's shit to make fun of, for sure.
Yeah.
I want to show this video. I'd like to reach a point of levity now because we've really fucking gone down a dark path. And there's so much funny shit happening as a result of this. But I do want to make it clear, like, as a principled person, I just can't, like, it's fucking impossible for me to see this and think anything but like this is truly hateful. This is truly hateful.
This is truly hateful. Absolutely. The comedy of the entire situation is that the world has lost its mind over Bud fucking Light.
Yes.
Arguably one of the obviously most popular, but also one of the worst beers out there.
Also, maybe one of your favorites if I know your beer taste.
I do like a light lager.
Yes, you do.
That is what I go for. But
all right.
Not Bud Light.
Impressive carrying skills, right? I got some Bud Lights for us. So, I kept hearing about this thing called March Madness, and I thought we were all just having a hectic month, but it turns out it has something to do with sports. And I'm not sure exactly
I hate
which
that.
sport, but either way, it's a cause to celebrate. This month, I celebrated my day 365 of womanhood, and Bud Light sent me possibly the best gift ever, a can with my face on it. Check out my Instagram story to see how you can enjoy March Madness with Bud Light and maybe win some money too.
Okay, I cut off part of it, but so if every Bud Light can in the country became like a Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light can, I could see that being kind of annoying.
I think that would be hilarious. People are just like at a tailgate in the fall in, I don't know, at like an Alabama game, and they're all being forced to drink. They all have their koozie, their American flag koozies covering up the can because they're like, I can't, but I have to have my Bud Light.
Yeah, I also think I do hate the like. It's kind of in that like sports ball category of jokes. Like,
yeah,
it's March Madness. I don't even know what sport it's for.
Those types of jokes are like, they're very patronizing because what it's like, who are you trying to target with those types of jokes? It's like, I guess you're trying to probably appeal to the person who just doesn't like sports in general, but often it feels like they're gender biased in a way, right? Like,
yeah, that's
you're targeting women because women don't know sports, when in reality, a lot of women love sports, but
Yeah. Well,
then
that's
you kinda start
kind
to
of a
go down.
thing that
Yeah.
people, I will say, like a legitimate thing that I think people have said about Dylan Mulvaney is when Dylan Mulvaney started publicly identifying as a woman, she started saying things. But again, I don't think these are the conservatives making this argument. I think these are like feminists.
The
or whatever.
conservatives had no idea who this person
Sure,
was
for
until
sure.
like 2 weeks ago.
But the like kind of using a stereotype as a personality trait, but that's like you're playing a character. Like Amy Schumer was doing her act was her as a Republican socialite basically until she got famous, and then she decided she wanted to make it. But like I don't really have that big of a problem with it. I think it should be judged kind of on the like using the stereotype for content should be judged on the same scale as any comedian doing the very same thing, because a lot of comedians are doing that kind of shit too.
Yeah, I think.
Which means, by the way, that a lot of people are rightfully not liking that specific thing.
Well, it just seems like we used to make, like Dave Chappelle has always. Don't think of Dave Chappelle now if you really hate him, but think of Dave Chappelle 20 years ago. 20 years
Sure.
ago, Dave Chappelle was beloved by all. He was.
Yes.
I mean, he was it. There was nobody bigger than him. And what he's always done, and he's said it too, is he makes fun of everybody equally, right?
Sure.
Now, recently that may have changed a little bit, or your opinion.
He's a little
of that.
fixated on a certain group of people.
Absolutely.
This very group of people.
20 years ago, he was. I mean, I think as comedians age, that type of thing can happen for sure. But if you are making fun of everybody equally, nobody's off limits. And what you should be making fun of is, we've gotten to the point where the people that don't understand humor will always fixate on things that either people can't control, like their looks, or
Sure.
I guess you can control your looks to some degree, but things that are beyond your control. Whereas I think people who maybe understand humor are going to go after those things that you do, your actions that are certainly controllable,
Sure.
that make you look like an idiot.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I had a woman, I used to have a joke that was like it was a gender joke for sure. Like it wasn't like specifically a trans joke. And I did have a woman in Spokane. I might have told this on the podcast already, but I had this joke, and this woman came up to me after the show, and she goes, "I'm so glad you told that joke because my daughter's trans." And I'm like, I hope this isn't some lady that's like, "Yeah, and fuck her." And she's like, and my daughter feels like she likes comedy, but she feels like comedians are like scared to talk about trans people, and it makes her feel like makes her feel less human. And so I'm going to tell her your joke. And I'm like, oh, that might be abuse. I might have just helped somebody abuse their child. But
I'm sure she'll deliver it with the same amount of timing.
But I do think there's a thing with that where it's like when you get most comfortable with someone is when you can make jokes about them. Like I have he was a recent guest on my other podcast, Nobody Likes Casey McClain, Barunji. Man, some of the shit we've said, like alone in a green room, would I'd be fucking thrown out of Seattle every time. They wouldn't let me cross the border into Seattle. You know what I mean? But that's like somebody I'm friends with. And I think that as a society, the more comfortable we become with a group, the more like very funny jokes can be told about those people.
Well, that's what makes humor is like an understanding and a comfortability with the subject matter that you're poking fun at. It's when you start making jokes like this is where Dave Chappelle really screwed up, is that he does not understand the trans community, and that's who he's making jokes about. It's like you have to. I mean, I guess he kind of understands now because they've really been after him. But it's like you can't just go into picking on somebody that you don't really understand. You have to have an understanding of the way that they behave in order to really get the most out of the humor that you're delivering.
Yeah, I mean, I might quibble with that slightly. I'm certainly going to be on. I think a lot of his jokes are very funny. I think some of them are cheap, and I could see, like when I watch it, I'm like, I understand why. I'm not naive. I understand why somebody would be offended by this, or that somebody could be offended by this. Yeah. But I think, like, again, it's like one of the ways to become normalized in society is to receive and accept jokes about yourself.
Yeah, I think that is very important. I mean, this is another. We're not going to talk about sports at all today. I think we're past that point. But this is another issue of just kind of how we've evolved as a society, especially in the social media era, is that we are not receptive to jokes about ourselves anymore. We're just not. Like if I can relate to the joke, like I go into full cancel culture mode. Not me personally, but a lot of people do. I mean, that is just like they'll let you know that they unfollowed you or they hate you because it relates directly to them. It's like if it hits too close to home, it's off limits. We can't, and it's like every joke is gonna hit close to home for somebody.
Yeah,
whether they happen to hear it or not.
Jokes come from a fucking dark place in a lot of cases.
Right.
So that's like to me the thing where like I have some jokes. I have a joke about not to give it away, but it's about shaking babies. I might have even referenced it on this podcast also. And I was thinking about making some merch about it.
Now, are you pro or con?
Well, that. What's funny is I had like an ass eating joke, which everyone has an ass eating joke, but it was like how much they loved eating ass. I had a joke where I was like, I think it's gross. Nobody should do it. But it got lumped into the, like I had comics who were like, dude, can you stop talking about how much you love eating ass? And I'm like, I literally, the whole joke is about how much I think it's disgusting. Like I'm on your side. Not even comics, like bookers and stuff like that. But this baby shaking joke, I sent my sister. I was like, hey, would you buy a shirt that said like had this on it? I explained the merch to her, and she's like, if it was your merch, I would wear it. If it was anyone else's merch, I would absolutely not wear it. And I was like, why? Can you tell me why? Because I'm like, it's like, you know, whatever, like what's that called? Like, something testing. I'm testing this merch. Whatever they do it in TV. What is that called?
Yeah. That's what...
Control group. She's like a control group, right? Yeah. And she's like, she said this thing, it's so funny to me, like, because of, again, the joke is about how you shouldn't shake babies. And, she goes, I'm from the corner of the internet that doesn't think that shaking babies is funny. And I was like, why? And she goes, well, people could be offended. And I was like, who? Like the people that shake babies? We're really like trying not to offend the people that shake their own baby.
You don't want the baby shakers coming after you.
Not even they can receive a joke.
They are an angry group, man. That's a mob you don't want to deal with.
I do also like...
You're far too big for them to shake.
Yeah. So some hypocrisy here, by the way. This is a photo of Kid Rock with a drag queen drinking a Bud Light old school bottle with a Coors hat on, which that might be the most offensive thing on this screen right now is Coors hat, Bud Light in hand.
It's a lot of branding. It's like the Adidas Nike battle. No, you know, it's such a tough space to navigate because there are probably a lot of people that Kid Rock took a stand against in that video that we just watched that he could probably sit down with and get along with just fine. I mean, Kid Rock is transcendent in a lot of ways, and that his music when he first started out was catered to both very white audiences and also black audiences. Like it worked on, it was kind of like the rap rock hybrid. I'm not saying there's people out there that are going to claim his ass, especially now.
Yeah.
But back in the day, it kind of worked for everybody, right? But you know, just this again goes back to just the groups on the internet and the great big they that we've talked about before. You see this opposition that may or may not even exist. You just kind of create them in your mind, and in doing so, you start to build hate for groups of people that you don't even get. Like, I find myself doing it. I mean, you can speak on personal experiences, but you see these people that you're like, everything they stand for is so wrong. And then you realize there are people in my life that might think like they do. And I like those people and get along with them just fine. And if we were to sit down, we'd have a great conversation about this, and potentially neither one of us would have changed our mind. I know I wouldn't, so I can't imagine they would. So who are we trying to incite here? And this is again, like if you're Kid Rock or anybody with any kind of platform on social media, I think you just don't understand the power that you have. I think that's one of the things. You might understand it if you're making money off your videos, if you're an influencer that actually makes money off what you do. Certainly, if you see the paycheck come in, you can understand the power that you have. But for people that are not trying to capitalize monetarily off the things that they do online, you don't understand the reach that you have.
Yeah, I do think that Kid Rock does understand his reach, and entertainers do understand the reach, and that's like why it's so potent when an entertainer who's aware of the following they've built takes this kind of a stand and makes this kind of like really angry and hateful. And again, like there's anger and hate coming from the other side too, to what about or both sides or whatever isms we're going to do for the day. But that's what makes it so potent is like this dude coming from the place where he actually he is like, you know, has decades of marketing tours and videos and you think that black people like him. I would bet they never did.
They probably never
black
did.
people weigh in, please, because my guess is they
okay, the genre that he was lumped into early on was targeted towards a diverse array of people. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, my suspicion is, I mean, isn't like the group that didn't like Bubba Sparks come from the coaching tree of young
Uncle Cracker. They were all kind of the
I
same.
think it was Uncle Cracker. I think
but Bubba Sparks is the same vein.
Spiritually, they're the same guy. But I'd be interested and scared to find out what Bubba Sparks feels about this. But also, by the way, like if you like look at polling again, like that's kind of an interesting thing to go like Kid Rock is part of this like kind of hip hop adjacent or the outskirts of hip hop in the early parts of his career. And I bet you if you anonymously polled most hip hop artists, their opinion on this kind of shit is probably not that far off of Kid Rock. There's a lot of polling that suggests.
I'm not saying that specifically, but in general, we're trying to typecast everybody we meet now. Right? Like we always do this.
But what we think always is we're like, when that person votes Democrat, that means they have all of the same opinions as me.
Yeah,
but they don't.
No, there's nuance. I mean, this is what makes it so hard and again, the nuance doesn't come across on the internet. The nuance doesn't come across on social media. You're fishing for likes. You're fishing for retweets if you're on Twitter or whatever it might be. You're fishing for an audience that has no nuance. They are just supporting you, right? That's the only nuance of the internet. They either support you or they don't. They're either for you or against you. They either think what you think or they don't. And in real life, that's just not how real life works. But we're getting so sucked into this internet world that it is black and white.
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
So an alternative beer for the folks that are on the conservative side has emerged. And this feels like a Mad TV sketch or something like that. Like it's fucking crazy that this even exists. It's on the lines of like when the like Let's Go Brandon thing happened and people started like making cash off of fucking Let's Go Brandon merch. And this is a guy who somehow, by the way, so that's we'll watch a small amount. This starts out for the folks listening. We got a Bud Light can and a baseball bat, and a man holding that baseball bat is what we see.
America's been drinking beer from a company that doesn't even know which restroom to use. That's why I created Conservative Dad's Ultra Right.
Okay, so this guy's like in a public restroom. Apparently just went and took a shit with a beer in his hand, first off.
You probably don't want to drink that beer now, my friend.
Ultra Right is such a funny... It's like Michelob Ultra Light. The branding's kind of similar to the... It's a very funny... Anyway.
100% woke-free beer. As conservatives, we're constantly getting hit in the face, left and right, by the way.
Oh, what a catch, by the way. Catches a ball with his goal. You know how when you're walking to the middle of the outfield where no one's on the field, they throw you a ball, and that's how you know we're conservative, goddammit.
They really aligned with baseball here for some reason. Baseball's got to be like, what the hell did we do to get dragged into this?
Virus. But the last place we want it is in our beer.
He throws weird.
Oh, I gotta say, when your whole thing is manliness, you gotta be able to throw.
You can't have this guy throw the ball if he throws like that. You could have cast anybody else.
Yeah, well, I suspect this is actually the man in charge of this.
He should have paid an actor for this part. This guy maybe hit 45 miles an hour, and that pitch sailed.
Also, the shirt rides up on the body in a way that he didn't expect people to be pausing this and watching it on a podcast. But like, can we get a wardrobe person on this commercial? For the love of God, his conservative hoodie doesn't fucking cover his gut, which mine wouldn't either, by the way.
If you know which bathroom to use, you know what beer you should be drinking. Stop giving money to woke corporations that hate our values. And to the rest of you woke
So for the folks that are just listening, he just there was a Bud Light can on a tee that he hit with a bat.
But it explodes all over him. It's just like this doesn't seem. Now your stupid sweatshirt's ruined, man.
I do think there's no chance it's legal to have a beer out on this field. I want to analyze the swing a little bit though.
This has to be a drug-free, alcohol-free zone. There's people just walking around in the background.
The swing is a little better than the throw.
The swing's pretty good. He's choked up on the bat though. Like,
That's
come on,
true.
man, you're not 11 years old anymore. But I will say he
To the
keeps
rest
the
of you
bat
local
in the
corporations,
zone.
Yeah.
stay away from our kids.
Decent cut.
Wait, hold on. This is interesting because we'll get one more look at the swing and then.
And to the rest of you woke corporations, stay the away from our kids.
So is he saying that it's acceptable for his beer company to advertise to kids, to be with kids, but
not the woke company.
this feels like, and I don't obviously have any proof of this, but it feels like this guy, we're gonna find out that he's got some fucking skeletons in the closet.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. The one thing that you can always take away from any situation like this, whether it's politically heated or not, is that capitalism always wins.
Yes.
I mean, we don't know what this guy believes. For all we know, he might be okay with everything
Sure.
Bud Light is doing, but what he saw was an opportunity to make money off people that don't like that.
Yeah.
And he's going to do that. He's going to make some money, I'm sure.
And there's, by the way, not to bring every single thing back to comedy, but there's comedians who have done this for sure, who became like they were apolitical before that, and they became like, well, now he's a conservative comic, and you're like, well, he doesn't really say anything that's conservative. He kind of is like, he's like pro-choice and what, but you're like, yeah, but he goes on Fox News, and you're like, man, I guess like I feel like he's kind of tricking you guys into loving him.
People have done this. Look, when you have to market yourself, when you're making money off yourself, you have to do whatever you got to do to hustle.
Yeah.
I understand it.
All right, let's see if there's anything else good in this. Ultra Right Beer online, or ultrarightbeer.com if you want to buy this, but don't buy it. It's $19.99 for a 6-pack.
That's ridiculous.
It ships to your house. It's expensive. Tastes like freedom. I bet it
Tastes like freedom.
It's also funny because it's a light lager. Like you're spending bar prices to get a can shipped to you of intentionally shitty beer.
Yeah, this feels a lot like when LeVar Ball created his own shoe brand.
Yes, exactly that kind of
and
thing.
And because he didn't understand the cost associated with making just a basic shoe, he had to charge like $400 for his stupid basketball shoes that then fell apart on everybody and then immediately died.
I want to read this because Anheuser-Busch put out a statement, and I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's on the screen right now.
It's quite the statement.
Well, what I actually, so everyone hates it, which usually means it's pretty good.
Yeah, if both sides hate it, then it's good.
Yeah, so there's this sentence that everyone's mad about because I think that conservatives expected an apology, and liberals expected like a word of affirmation. And what they said, we never intended to be part of a discussion that divides people. We are in the business of bringing people together over a beer. And then there's a bunch of stuff about the history of Anheuser-Busch and this fucking guy, something Whitworth, that is the CEO of Anheuser-Busch. But that specific thing to me, it's them saying like, we fucked up in that we didn't want this to become a controversy. That wasn't our intention, which I think might be a lie. But let's, at face value, let's take him for a moment. But they don't walk it back. They don't say, we're sorry for this. Because then they're just losing the other half, right? They're just losing the other half of their customers. And I think there's going to be a lot of people who don't actually give a shit, who are still going to buy Bud Light. And the other thing that annoyed me so much, by the way, is these supposed capitalists, these people who are supposedly like they understand the economic impact of this. They kept going, Budweiser lost $6 billion off of this. And then they would show this one day or 1 week that, well, first off, they would go, they didn't actually lose $6 billion, their stock is up, and it would be like that day.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it did have a like precipitous drop when this happened, when this controversy occurred. However, they'll be like, oh, the stock, they lost $6 billion, and you're like, no, their stock price dropped that much, which they lost $6 billion in market cap, but they're like 20 So they're like 50% up since last October, and they lost a small chunk of their market cap.
Yeah.
This desperate for a story on both sides thing. Budweiser's actually performing great.
Oh, anytime you see those stories about how much a company lost in the aftermath of something, the news media, they're not usually statisticians.
Right.
They're bringing you the sensationalism.
They're
of the
so
story.
bad at math. They're so goddamn bad at math. It's so frustrating.
Now, the part of the statement that is totally false is the part where they say they're in the business of bringing people together over a beer. You're in the money-making business, just like every other major corporation. I understand they all try to frame it in this much more positive light, but every move that you make, if you're Anheuser-Busch, is to make money.
Yeah.
That's just what it is. Every move.
I mean, I think that's a poetic way to say it. What I think they're saying is our business isn't politics. Our business isn't. I mean, I think he's making it folksy because he's the fucking CEO of an iconic beer brand. But
I would have to imagine that when they signed up Dylan Mulvaney to do this, they were probably trying to reach a different demographic that maybe they don't often target. And they do this a lot. All companies do, where you will just, especially in the influencer culture, where you will take your product and have somebody pitch it online.
Yeah.
And usually those are pretty innocent things. Most people probably don't even see them or know they even exist. It's not like it's a TV ad campaign.
There's a company, by the way, that has given myself and my buddy Jess Everett, we do the Road Hacks YouTube channel together. Yeah. We're going to be doing some a review of some shorts that we received for free. Some, I think, kind of short shorts. Golf shorts.
What do we know the brand?
We do know the brand. It's called.
If you don't want to say it right now, you don't have to.
Yeah, let's wait till the review comes out. We can watch it together one week because we're gonna. They want it.
Do you know the inseam measurement on these shorts?
8.5 inches.
8.5 is not that short.
Okay,
that's usually it's at the knee.
Yeah, I put them. I got them. I have them. Yeah. They're a little above the knee, which is I would typically be a middle of the knee person.
Yeah.
But they sent us a thing that was we love the comedy aspect of what you do. Would you be interested in doing this? And I'm like, well, if you're on board with that, then yes, we'll fucking do, because I'm going to make a lot of jokes in this thing.
When it comes to the politics of shorts, 8.5 is perfectly in the middle. I think we talked about this, but I've seen conservative people on message boards that are I need a 10-inch short, 10-inch inseam. It's got to be below the knee. And then you get the real liberals who are I wear a 4-inch inseam on my shorts. I want to be hanging out. So 8.5 is perfectly down the middle. Hey, appeals to both sides.
Who am I, baby? Down the middle, left of center. I'm short of center in this case.
You are the target. They know you know the 8.5-inch short market better than anybody.
So they also have a 10.5-inch inseam. They don't need a review for that one. They need the 8.5-inch. So. Okay, well, we should briefly talk about sports. DeMar DeRozan's daughter screamed at the Toronto Raptors players. I had to, because DeMar DeRozan used to play for Toronto, right?
He did.
Yeah, so I was in my mind, I kept every time I see this story, I have to remind myself that he plays for the Bulls now. So she, and I think she's not going to be, at least not allowed to do this, or maybe not even sitting courtside, but I'm going to play just briefly the sound.
If he steps the wrong way or something, just turns it and causes pain, he could be done for the...
Scotty Barnes is a host on Barnes's official visit to Florida State.
So you can hear the screaming in the background. And later on, they'll show...
DeRozan. And here's the voice you're hearing when Raptors shoot. She's screaming.
So first off, there's a couple things about this for me, as I'm a parent of a daughter. Brilliant strategy. This is I mean, obviously I don't think DeMar DeRozan had his daughter do this. I think she's trying to support her dad's team.
Yeah. An important thing about this too is that the game is in Toronto. DeRozan plays for Chicago now. This was during the NBA play-in game, the playoffs. So because they're in Toronto and she's screaming at the Toronto players, it's the home crowd, so no one else is making a sound. It stands out. It's not like everyone's screaming and her scream happens to stand out. It's pretty much silent in there, and that scream pierces the air.
Also, she's in the players' family section, it would appear, so nobody's stopping her, because I think if she was doing that and she was in a regular section of the stadium, people would be tell this lady to shut the fuck up. And
well, you don't often hear a kid do it. The child scream is unsettling because you immediately associate it with something wrong. When people do this kind of thing all the time at basketball games, but when you hear an adult scream, you're like, they're just being annoying or just it's gamesmanship to some degree. When it's a kid doing it, it actually might throw you a little bit. And it seemed to have an effect. I know Chicago goes on to win this game.
And so Toronto misses half their free throws. They missed 18 out of 36 free throw attempts.
At that point, you got to credit the kid.
Yeah. And what's, I guess let's see I don't know what the final score was. We'll see if we can briefly. So, 109, 105. That's like the
difference is the missed free throws. Easily. Yeah. Very easily. Yeah.
So a couple things about that. Like I said, I'd be proud of my daughters. My daughter's never had an opportunity to contribute to my life in that way. I don't know.
Maybe she can come to comedy shows one day and heckle other people. I don't know.
Yeah, she comes to a comedy contest and she starts booing the other comedians. It does kind of put me in that. There's a thing when you have a kid that's like, I took my daughter. I've tried to write a joke about this, but I took my daughter to a restaurant, and kids will just sometimes. You just don't realize until you have a kid how little control you actually have over that kid. Like how they can really torpedo an entire experience if they just don't feel. So I took her to a restaurant by myself. It's wintertime. I get her in there, and I'm like just taking off her jacket. And she screams full volume. And
it doesn't help that you're a man by yourself.
I'm a man by myself. And my daughter is in probably also because I dressed her mismatched jacket, shirt. It looks like we found these at a thrift store in the town I've kidnapped her to. You know what I mean? And people are in that place does this guy even fucking know this kid? Kids will embarrass the fuck out of you. We try to get. We take our daughter to a lot of restaurants, which is people get upset about in concept. She's pretty good at them now because she's got a lot of experience. But also, a thing that we would do is when she started acting out, take her away from the people. I'm very aware that kids can be annoying. Yeah. Take her away from the people who will hate you if you bring a child in. Because it's become this in vogue thing to be children shouldn't be at restaurants. Fuck yourself. Go to a bar if you don't want a kid there.
And they're as somebody who does not have a child, you are cognizant of parents who are trying, right? When things are going bad. We've all been around the parents that don't do anything when their kid's acting out, and you know what that looks like. Kids just running crazy through, a store, Walmart.
Yeah. I have so much more empathy now than I used to.
Yeah, but when whether the kids are always going to act out. It's when you see the parent actually trying to make things better for people around that you're like, okay, they're doing all they can.
Yeah. I was on a flight from Montana, and it's early. I always take the first flight back home. By the way, I'll be in Montana next weekend, April 27th through 30th. If you live in Montana and listen to this podcast, it's got to be hundreds of you. All over Montana. Check out my Instagram. Billings, Helena, fucking Bozeman. The other one, Missoula.
Everything we talked about today should resonate well with those people.
Yes, of course, of course. I think those are all college-ish towns. Billings is we could talk about Montana at another time. Probably when I get back, I'll have some stories.
Sure, yeah, I've been to Montana many times.
Taking, by the way, to the first two shows, my opener is this guy named Charles Hall, who's a very funny comic in Spokane, but a guy who he is black and there's no mistaking it. You're not, how there's some racially ambiguous folks. Not Charles Hall. Yeah, so he's done a lot of shows in Montana. I'm not throwing him into a bear trap or anything like that. But I think we'll have some stories. Anyway, I was on a flight from Montana, and this kid behind me was kicking my seat. The other thing is I had switched with this woman because she wanted to sit with her husband.
Oh, that's nice of you. You're one of those people.
Well, she's like, it's the same class of seat, which it was. It's just one row back. And it's also a window seat. It wasn't a big sacrifice.
She wasn't pulling will you go sit in my middle seat so I can sit next to
I was in whatever, not business class, but the one behind that.
Yeah. And that is the extent of when anyone offers a trade on a plane, that's the only acceptable. Same class, same type of seat.
Yeah.
When people try to pull can you take my middle seat so I can sit in your aisle or your window next to the person I know? No, you can go fuck yourself.
Yes. So this woman, though, the one downgrade was if I had stayed in my seat, it would have been this old Indian woman sitting behind me. And instead, it was a toddler. And he was kicking my seat. I'm trying to sleep. That's like, I always try to sleep. Any flight, pretty much, I'm like, there's never a time in my life right now where I'm like, I don't need to catch up on sleep. I always need to catch up on sleep.
Yeah.
So any flight I try to sleep on, and I'm on this flight, and this kid's kicking my seat, and I keep looking back, and I hear his mom say it a couple times, like, stop kicking the seat. And then at a point, I think she just pretended like she was asleep, because I kept looking back, and she's just eyes closed. And I'm like, you fucking piece of shit. Like, I have to turn back and scold your kid in some way. And I get it, like, it's tough. And she had 2 kids on the plane. I've never taken my daughter on a plane before. I understand it's difficult, but also you got to get your kid to stop kicking my fucking seat, because I will fucking...
I think the trade-off for her was probably, if I, like, actually get this kid to stop, they're going to start screaming. And then it's like, it's either this guy's problem or it's the entire plane's problem. And at that point, you're just weighing the cost benefit.
She
and you're
just
like,
sacrificed me to the gods.
This guy's going to have to suffer today.
Yeah. And
Luckily, it's a short flight, I guess.
Our last thing, the biggest news of the week, is Russell Wilson did my favorite thing that he's done since winning a Super Bowl with the Seattle Seahawks. Is he flipped a golf cart at Arrowhead Golf Course, which is apparently somewhere maybe in Colorado. And if you look at, like, the stories, maybe he wasn't driving, maybe he was
in
driving.
the cart, though.
Who gives a shit? Russell Wilson flipped the cart. It's so fucking funny.
It is. Yeah. No, it's he's had a rough year. It's just been a bad year for Russell Wilson, and this is just the cherry on top of his bad year.
Yes. All right, so do you want to play the home run game? Because we actually have a chance to get out of here at like a not doing an hour and 45 minutes.
Okay. That's all you had to say about Russell Wilson.
It's just so fucking funny. It's I don't even have like the jokes. The jokes people are making in memes are better than anything I could think of.
I have a little bit of empathy for this situation. Not because I flipped a golf cart, but because I have a push cart, as a lot of people who golf, especially around here, have. And my push cart one time, I set it down, went to go hit my shot. I heard my friend scream behind me. I turned around, and my push cart was rolling into a pond. And it fell in.
Oh, that's
and everything
brutal.
fell in, all of it. And the worst part about it is I had my phone attached to the cart because there's like usually a little place where you can set your phone.
Yeah.
And inside my phone, I always keep like my ID and my credit cards in my phone. Like I have one that holds like 3 cards. You know? So I was mostly worried about that. Obviously, I wanted to get my stuff out, but I knew if that would dry, I could get that out. So I had to jump into the friggin' pond. And luckily, it was only like a 2-foot high pond, you know, but just bad enough. And it's very murky at the bottom of that thing.
Oh, no.
And I'm trying to retrieve all my stuff out of it. I never did find my phone. It sunk to the bottom of this thing, and it was impossible to find. The clubs all floated. They all stayed up. The bag floated. The cart, obviously, that was easy to pull out because it wasn't very deep. But it wasn't a fun walk back.
It's brutal that it would have been brutal either way, but it's the most brutal because you didn't find your phone. If you'd found your phone, it would be
then
fully
it's a funny
justifiable.
story. Then it's just a funny story. Yeah, the really scary part is this was right before, this was a couple weeks before we were going on our honeymoon, and my ID was in my phone. So I had to order a new ID, and they usually say the turnaround time for that thing is right around 2 weeks. And I had less than 2 weeks before I was getting on this plane to go to Hawaii for my honeymoon.
Damn.
And it came like the day before we left. Now I had looked up all the ways that you could possibly still get on a plane without an actual ID, because they always give you like, here's your temporary ID, and it's like a picture of your ID on a piece of paper that literally no one would accept anywhere.
Yes.
It's like, thanks for this, thanks for nothing. But my ID did show up like the day before we left, so I guess it was meant to be. But that was the scariest part about it. It wasn't the not walking back on the course with my pants soaking wet, covered in mud, and water spilling out of my shoes as everyone stared at me like.
What hole did you do this on?
This was hole 12.
Did
on a
this end your
course.
day of golf?
It ended my day of golf.
Okay.
There was no way I was going to be able to golf this wet. Like, you
Yeah.
don't understand how wet. Like, it's not like I didn't do like what the golfers on the tour do, where they roll up the pants first and then take off the shoes.
Well, there's
and
kind of a
socks.
time-sensitive element of that,
No,
too.
it was too time sensitive. I was like, we're jumping in.
Yeah.
We're going in to get this stuff because we
Damn.
got to get it now. So then walking all the way, I'm the deepest part of the course, basically,
Yeah.
at this point. I have to walk all the way back. And first of all, you never realize how hard it is to just walk through a golf course when you're not at the end of it. It
Yeah.
takes a while.
And when you're not going with the flow of
Yeah,
play.
no, you're walking
yeah.
against traffic, right? Everyone else is coming towards you. Every single hole you pass, there's somebody there. Luckily, I knew this course pretty well, so I knew how to get back. But it's bad when people look at you and they don't have anything to say. Like nobody even had a joke. Like everybody can look at me and be like, okay, this guy's going through some shit.
God
But no
damn.
one had a joke to offer because they knew it was one of those situations where probably not the best time for a joke.
That's brutal. I thought I had stories that could contribute to this. I lost my phone a week before our wedding, which would have been a week before our honeymoon. Phone though, not ID.
Yeah.
Brutal. The ID is brutal. The phone, we were broke, so we had just got new phones, so it's like $1,000 that I would have had to spend.
The phone cost sucks for
Yeah.
sure, but at least you can replace a phone immediately or like theoretically get by without one if you need to.
Nah, not me. But yeah, and I played Chambers Bay and had my cart basically collapse on me 4 times. I had a tripod with a camera. Broke the tripod. The camera lens got cracked. Like all kinds of bad stuff happened there. Doesn't compare. The phone, the ID, the credit cards. Fuck them. You can pretty much get those quickly. Usually,
easily replaceable.
the ID is brutal. If I ever get mugged, and I've only been mugged. I actually did get mugged in Kent once, but it was like so quick that I didn't even
sounds like
realize.
Yeah.
I didn't realize this guy had pulled a knife on us until my friend. He was like, "Do you have any money?" And I was like, no. And he's like, give me $20. And whatever happened, I gave him the amount of money he was asking for. And my friend's like, "Did you see that he had a knife out?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like, he was fucking mugging you. Like,
So he mugged you for just $20.
it was something. It was like some small enough amount of money that I was like feeling charitable. Luckily for me, by the way,
Yeah.
that I was feeling charitable in that moment. But if I ever get mugged and I know it's happening, I got to try to negotiate. Let me keep the phone or put my phone like 100 yards away so you can escape, but I can still have my phone and I won't, whatever. And give me my goddamn ID, please. The ID.
I've thought about this too. But just the negotiation in that situation, the fact that this guy was going to commit a crime and then be like, let's say it was $50 and be like, just give me 50. Like, all right. I mean, I guess the rest of the wallet is usually, it doesn't mean anything to these guys. Like, okay, they might get your credit cards.
I'm going to shut them off quickly.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
As soon as you get away, you're going to turn them off. And what are they going to do? They spend, even if they get like an hour to spend money on it, that makes them more traceable as a criminal.
Of course,
so it
of
seems
course.
like that'd be a bad plan. So yeah, I mean, look, it's got to be tough for muggers out there. People don't carry cash like they used to.
Yeah. Yes, it's tough.
But if you're going to pull the knife and commit the crime, you should just take everything at that point.
We aren't thinking about the economic impact the cashless society is having on thieves. All right. I have a home run game for you.
I have one too. I feel like I actually have a good one today.
Okay. I have one former Mariner that is a guy. I had one. Did you tweet something about Cliff Floyd today, or did you retweet something?
I did not.
Because Cliff Floyd's a guy that always feels to me like let's do him actually, because Cliff Floyd's a guy that was on the trade block so much that he feels like a former Mariner to me.
He was a super prospect coming up in the 90s. Who was the other guy, though? Tell me who the other guy
The other guy I was going to pick is Jose Guillen, who has like kind of same pedigree as far as like good. I think it was pretty good prospect. Also, just felt like he was always, but then he became a Mariner and had like a stretch of good.
They probably had about the same number of home runs in their career, somewhere close to it. Although I think Cliff Floyd probably stuck around a lot longer.
So Cliff Floyd to me feels like a guy who would have been like a Major League Baseball journeyman, but I believe when I looked earlier today, I think he only played for 3 teams.
He definitely...
No, he didn't. He played for 7 teams.
Okay,
he wasn't.
Almost. Good thing we're not guessing teams.
He played the vast majority of his career was like up until age 33, it was I think it had only been 4 teams, and then he played on 3 teams in his last 3 years.
I definitely remember him playing for the Expos, the Marlins, and the Mets, and he might have played for the A's at one point.
So if you had to guess, how many games did he play for Montreal?
He was only there at the start of his career, so probably not. Maybe like a little bit more.
Here's a weird one. He actually played
like 300, maybe.
It was it's 271.
That's pretty close.
But he played again for them. So he played for them the start of his career, and then again at age 29 for only 15 games. He played for 3 teams in 2002, which is a rare occurrence that you get traded twice in a season.
Yeah, he was one of those guys that he never became what his pedigree as a prospect was, but he managed to ride the coattails of that pedigree for many, many years. You know, a lot of guys do that. They never really become what you thought they would, but people still think of them as they did when they were 20 years old. And so they always want to give them a chance.
Well, and he also, like, I mean, you know, you obviously have to adjust it for like some sort of a 600 plate appearances or something like that. It was like a basically league average player by wins above replacement.
Yeah. So are we doing the thing where we tell how many years they played? Are we still doing that?
Yeah, we'll still do the years. He played 17 years.
Yeah, okay. And probably towards the end he was like a platoon guy a little bit. And at the beginning he probably didn't play full seasons right off the bat. But I do remember him coming up in like 94-ish or 93-ish and like being a really big deal. Yeah, being a really big deal. He was one of the biggest prospects. Because I was an active baseball card collector as a child.
Sure.
At that point, and his cards were worth a lot of money, and that's generally how you know how.
I'm hoping I can quickly pull up his prospect rank. Oh, here we go. Prospect rankings.
He might have been. He was definitely top 5. Had to be top 5.
So he was So he made his debut in '93. He still had he's played so few games. He still had a prospect ranking in '94. In '93, he was the number 3 prospect. In '94, he was the number 1 prospect.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. He was as big as it got. And that's hard to do in a place like Montreal, like playing for the Expos. Like, they really got to believe in you. And then ultimately, but I think most notably, he was a Marlin. I mean, that's kind of where I remember him having his best days.
Sure.
And then later in New York. Okay, so 17 years. And he's probably, I mean, to last as a power hitter in the 90s, you had to really be hitting some bombs at certain points in time. But he probably averaged about 20 to 25. And if it was 150, okay, I'm going to say 305.
233 home runs.
Wow, that's a lot less than I would have thought.
I know. I felt the same way. Because I think he was a guy that always, kind of like the Carl Everett, where you're like, this guy looks like a power hitter. Like, he looks great playing baseball. I don't think Carl Everett looked as great. Cliff Floyd looked amazing playing baseball. He looked like a natural baseball player.
Yeah.
Looked like a natural power hitter. And I just think it was like he never, again, it's like kind of like another guy like this would be like Jason Hayward.
Yeah, Hayward's a really good example of an uber prospect that never came around.
But played for, I mean, I think he's maybe still around, maybe got cut.
Yeah, recently. He's serviceable. He's like he does just enough.
Let's see what Jason Hayward has done on a screen that we're not protecting. And so you said 305?
Yes.
232, another big swing potential.
It's a big swing. I don't even have a guy that could give you that big of a swing today, I don't think.
162 home runs for Hayward and a lot of teams recently. Okay.
But Hayward was second in Rookie of the Year and an All-Star selection in his rookie season. See, that's the type of thing that ensures you have a long career, because guys will always give you a chance. They're like, well, he was good once. Yeah. He was good once, so they'll always give him a chance.
He won 5 Gold Gloves.
Yeah, he can play defense for sure, but everyone thought he was going to be. I mean, the story when he was coming up was him and Freddie Freeman were buddies,
right?
And they were going to be the same, the same level of production. And clearly, one has been great and one has not.
Although let's do this, because now you're going to get my annoying stat head side. According to Baseball Reference WAR, which is not Alex my preferred WAR methodology, but 38.9 wins above replacement for Jason Hayward. Probably a lot on defense. And let's see what old Freddie Freeman, as good as he's been, has done WAR 49.6.
Not that much better. Yeah.
I think that Hayward's defense has made him underappreciated as opposed to just being disappointing.
I've got a guy whose WAR falls squarely in between those two.
Oh, dang.
And he played quite a while in the major leagues, 24 years, in fact, according to Baseball Reference. Former Mariner. He was also part of I would consider one of the very worst trades in Mariner history, which, they've screwed up a lot. But this one was, I would call it an epic screw up.
I'm somewhat worried that you're going to give me someone that I'm like, I don't even fucking know.
No, you'll know. On December 20th, 1993, he's traded from the Seattle Mariners to the Cleveland Indians for Felix Fermin and Reggie Jefferson, and it is shortstop Omar Vizquel. They terrible trade. I don't know what they would think. I think they believed in Reggie Jefferson as like a thumping first baseman, and he was not. He played one season with the Mariners and very much disappointed.
So Felix Fermin was a guy who was on my radar to include in this kind of a contest because I remember Felix Fermin.
Felix Fermin probably had like 15 career home runs.
Yeah, maybe not even that many. He was like a defense-only shortstop.
Yeah, not even defense first. Defense first would be too generous.
Yeah, so Felix Fermin, let's see, because that'll be fun. 4 career home runs, yes.
And a career WAR of 1.8, where Omar, his career WAR was 45.6. So great trade. I'm sure Reggie Jefferson's career WAR was even less than Felix Fermin's 1.8. So
let's see, Reggie. I think there might have also been there used to be a time when teams would trade a player because they had become like too annoying. And I think 4.5 for Reggie
Jefferson. That's surprising. That's more than I would have thought.
But with Seattle, Reggie Jefferson, 8 home runs, actually played 327, 392. 543 triple slash lines, pretty goddamn good.
That is pretty good. I don't know what went wrong here.
I mean, he ended up in Boston and had whatever. We don't need to dig into. Actually, man, he had like some pretty.
In Boston, he was productive.
Yeah. He must have been a horrible defender because he
was mostly a DH.
Underappreciated. I guess he's playing first base and maybe a little bit of right field or left field. It looks like.
Yeah, he just, for whatever reason, couldn't make it. But, yeah, Omar never should have been traded. But I think the Mariners looked at that at the time, and they were like, we got Alex Rodriguez about to be ready for shortstop. We got to clear this space. Unfortunately, they ended up trading a future Hall of Famer and one of the best defensive shortstops to ever play the game.
Yeah.
But, again, one of the best defensive shortstops.
Yeah.
Still a very good hitter. He hit at the top of the order in Cleveland. I would say that double play combo in Cleveland was one of the best ever. Omar Vizquel and Roberto Alomar, and I think they typically hit right there at the top of the order, too.
And 2 guys, and we'll look at Omar Vizquel's stats in a minute, but my recollection is 2 guys, both Alomar and Vizquel, like, walked a decent amount, so, like, a little bit value. Well, I think Alomar has specifically walked a decent amount. Vizquel might not have. I will say Vizquel's, his stature is reduced in the, like, analytics don't love him. I will say that. They don't love his defense, and they don't love his offense.
He had a flair, defensively, but
he was like like how Jason Williams was a very fun point guard to watch, but like not actually very valuable. Yeah. So Omar Vizquel, I feel like there's a little bit of a mercy rule thing you're doing that I don't love, where you're just like, oh, here's a guy with no home runs.
I think this one's going to be tougher than you think.
Okay, I seem to remember that. I think he hit triple digits. I'm going. I see. God, he just had played for so long, and I don't think he ever had like any signature home run years. I'm going 102.
That's pretty close. He had exactly 80.
Okay.
So you're only off by 22. I thought you would go under. As I thought about it, I remembered him like having. Oh, it was. I think it was Ozzie Smith had over 100. Maybe let's actually look that up. Because he was in that kind of same, Ozzie Smith was in that same category of like of defense only shortstops or defense first shortstops. Maybe I'm wrong completely. He only had 28 home runs. I'm completely full of shit. I don't know who you're thinking. Now, if you were ever going to believe in like the steroid era, in 2002, Omar Vizquel has 14 home runs. It's the only time he reaches
mysterious.
It's the only time he reaches double digits in his career. Shortly thereafter, all the steroid news breaks. And then all of a sudden his numbers drop. The next year he only hit 2.
Yeah.
Maybe he dabbled and then got spooked. I don't know. Or maybe
the juice
he just
ball. I kind of think there was a thing that MLB did where they were like, everybody stop because we're gonna start testing. Everybody stop.
Get your home runs in now.
Yeah.
In 2002, he did. He had 14 of his 80 in one season.
Yeah, Roberto Alomar, 371 on base percentage for his career, and 210 home runs.
Roberto Alomar had a lot of home runs. Yeah, but he was just a better bat overall.
He was
Look at his career WAR, 67.
I know. What an incredible baseball player. Let's see we'll look at his Fangraphs WAR.
He's not even in the Hall of Fame, is he?
I thought he was.
Oh, maybe he is. I don't know. I could be totally wrong about that.
Hold on, I bet he's got to be like a first ballot guy.
Yeah, you're probably right. I probably was thinking of maybe Sandy Alomar.
Well, Sandy
He's
Alomar. I don't know if he's first ballot or not, but yeah, I mean that combination was great. Those Cleveland teams, I call them the Cleveland teams because I'm not a fucking racist. From the early 90s were just so goddamn good.
They were very good. Roberto Alomar will
Mid-90s
still always
more.
be best known for spitting on a guy.
It's unfortunate that a guy's entire career can be fucked up in that way.
You just don't spit on people.
Yeah.
Don't spit on people.
Oh, by the way, Draymond Green got ejected from a game for stomping on somebody, which is like, what a Draymond Green story.
I saw the video. He stepped on Domantas Sabonis, and Domantas Sabonis acted like he'd been shot.
Okay.
And I was like, the first mistake Draymond made was stomping on a Euro. You don't stomp on a Euro because they have practice in selling these injuries.
True.
And he did that, and he got exactly what he needed, which
Sure.
was getting Draymond kicked out.
All right, that's the end of the podcast. Thank you, everybody, for listening.